How the greatest sheriff of the Wild West died. How did the frontier's giants truly meet the end they never saw coming? One faded far from any main street, another disappeared beyond the border, and a famed badge holder died nowhere near a gunfight. Their last hours spawned rumors, missing evidence, and questions historians still debate. Follow the original telegrams, coroner notes, and eyewitness scraps as we retrace those final steps. Then decide for yourself where legend ends and reality begins. Pat Garrett, the sheriff who outlived his legend, Patrick Floyd. Garrett was born June 5, 1850, on an Alabama plantation and grew up in Reconstruction-era Louisiana, long enough to learn he hated plowing but loved shooting. At 19, he trailed a cattle drive west, broke broncs on the Llano Estacado, and gambled away every grub stake he earned. When the Lincoln County War exploded in New Mexico Territory, 1878, Garrett watched rival gangs turn the settlement of Lincoln into a charred chessboard. Determined to tame the chaos and to escape his own debts, he accepted an emergency commission as sheriff in late 1880. His fame ignited in a moonlit bedroom at Fort Sumner on July 14, 1881. 2 revolver shots, 1 dead outlaw, and Billy the Kid became history. Newspapers lionized Garrett as the man who brought civilization to the prairie, and he doubled down, publishing the authentic life of Billy the Kid in 1882 to cement the story in his own words. The glory proved fleeting. Garrett failed to win re-election, drifted through stints as Texas Ranger, saloon keeper, customs collector, and rancher, always chasing an enterprise that would match the Kid's headline payday. He tangled with Teddy Roosevelt, briefly his political patron, feuded with neighbors over water rights, and never escaped whispers that he'd shot Billy in the back. A controversial, still debated death, by 1908, Garrett was 57, cash-strapped, and leasing part of his Bear Canyon ranch near Las Cruces to a young cowboy named Wayne Brazel, who planned to graze 200 Spanish goats on Garrett's barren mesas. An arrangement the old lawman soon regretted. On February 29, 1908, Leap Day. Garrett rode a buggy toward Las Cruces with Brazel and a mutual acquaintance, Carl Adamson, intent on renegotiating or canceling the goat deal. They stopped along the scrubby Oregon road to water their horses. Accounts diverged. Brazel's version: Garrett dismounted, cursed the goats, reached for his shotgun. Brazel, fearing for his life, drew a Colt revolver and fired once above Garrett's belt line and again behind his left ear. Rumor mill, hired killer Jim Mysterious Miller lurked nearby and pulled the trigger, collecting a $1,500 bounty from angry cattlemen. Local gossip: Adamson spun in the buggy seat and shot Garrett himself to erase a gambling debt. Whoever held the pistol, Garrett collapsed in the dust, dead before he could unsling his famed Winchester. A territorial jury accepted Brazel's self-defense plea in 8 minutes, and no one else was charged. The Kid's slayer now lay in Las Cruces' Masonic cemetery, his own epitaph as ambiguous as the one he'd written for Billy. Pat Garrett's life traced the arc of the frontier itself. Restless, improvisational, and ultimately undone by the very disputes over land and livestock that define the New West he once swore to civilize. Bat Masterson, from Buffalo Gun to Broadway byline, William Barclay. Bat Masterson was born in 1853 on a Quebec farm, but the buffalo-rich plains of Kansas forged him. By 20, he'd survived the 1874 Battle of Adobe Walls, scouted for the U.S. Army, and won a reputation for calm daring. He once disarmed a Cheyenne warrior with a single rifle butt and a grin. Dodge City soon beckoned. As Ford County deputy and then elected sheriff, 1877 and 79, Masterson confronted trail herd rowdies with measured nerve rather than fast lead. The town's gamblers swore his soft-spoken warnings carried more weight than most men's Colts. He rescued Brother Ed during a street gunfight, engineered the Dodge City Peace Commission, with Wyatt Earp in 1883 and earned the rare distinction of retiring without a murder indictment on his badge. Restless, Bat drifted west as a faro dealer, boxing referee, and Denver sports promoter before New York's bright lights captured him in 1902. There, the one-time buffalo hunter reinvented himself as a newspaper columnist. 6 mornings a week, his master sans views in the New York Morning Telegraph skewered crooked fight managers, praised fleet pugilists, and sprinkled frontier reminiscence. 6 shooters only as dangerous as the man behind it. President Theodore Roosevelt, charmed by that frontier candor, appointed him a deputy U.S. Marshal for Manhattan in 1905. Bat's final badge, a quiet desk, one last deadline. On October 25, 1921, Masterson arrived at the telegraph offices off Times Square complaining of a little tightness. He waved away concern, settled at his oak roll top, and began pounding out a column lauding lightweight champ Benny Leonard. Mid-sentence, literally between the words there and are, he slumped forward. Colleagues thought he'd dropped a pencil. When they lifted him, the incomparable lawman-turned-scribe was already gone, felled by a massive heart attack at 67. His 6-page obituary ran the next morning opposite the very column he'd been writing, typeset exactly as he'd left it, abrupt break and all. Bat Masterson, who had stared down stampedes, desperados, and prize-fighters, met his final. Bell answering only to deadline, his revolver long since traded for a Remington typewriter. Seth Bullock, the steely-eyed sheriff who civilized Deadwood. Born in Amherstburg, Ontario in 1849, Seth Bullock fled an abusive father at 16 and headed west. By his early 20s, he was sheriff of Montana's Lewis and Clark County, where a calm stare and a borrowed shotgun settled more disputes than bullets ever did. In 1876, Bullock and partner Sol Starr followed news of Black Hill's gold to Deadwood, opened the town's first hardware store, and, in the chaos that followed Wild Bill Hickok's murder, accepted an emergency commission as Lawrence County's first sheriff. Working with a single deputy, he cleared gamblers from Main Street, banned sidearms, and quelled lynch mobs without firing a fatal shot. Proving order could arrive by backbone instead of bloodshed, Bullock's granite composure impressed rancher politician Theodore Roosevelt, who forged a lifelong friendship with him. Roosevelt later tapped Bullock to serve as a U.S. Land Office receiver, captain of volunteer cavalry troop in the Spanish-American War, and finally wear the star of U.S. Marshal for South Dakota. The last ride, when Roosevelt died on January 6, 1919, Bullock, now 69 and battling colon cancer, vowed to build the nation's first memorial to his friend. Despite constant pain, he supervised stonecutters constructing a 31-foot tower on Sheep Mountain, which Deadwood soon renamed Mount Roosevelt. He dedicated the monument on July 4th, but the climb drained his remaining strength. Retreating to the Bullock Hotel he had opened in 1895, he relied on morphine just to eat. Before dawn on September 23, 1919, Bullock pinned on the marshal's badge Roosevelt had given him and tried to walk once more toward Mount Moriah's ridge. He collapsed on the second-floor landing outside room 211, the hallway guests still claim he haunts, and died minutes later at age 70. Pallbearers carried his coffin up the pine-covered slope of Mount Moriah Cemetery and set it facing the Roosevelt Tower so that in death the lawman could keep perpetual watch on the monument to his closest friend and on the gold rush town he had tamed without a single wasted bullet. Texas John Slaughter, Cochise County's straight-shooting sheriff, John Horton. Texas John Slaughter was born on an 1841 Louisiana plantation, drifted to Texas as a teen, and fought Comanches, rustlers, and Civil War marauders with equal aplomb. After striking it rich driving longhorns up the Chisholm Trail, he pushed even farther west, buying Arizona's vast San Bernardino ranch in 1884. 2 years later, voters, tired of border raiders and stagecoach holdups, elected him sheriff of Cochise County. Slaughter answered with a Winchester, a bulldog stare, and a growl. "I'll take charge of this county, dead or alive." In 3 years, he arrested or routed every major gang between Tombstone and the Sierra Madres while famously warning, "Juries, convict 'em or turn 'em loose, I'll get 'em again." The last roundup by 1921, the 80-year-old lawman was slowed by rheumatism and failing hearing, but still rode daily fences on a white gelding, Colt pacemaker strapped. Though his hip, a harsh winter brought pneumonia that lingered into the new year. Slaughter refused a doctor's orders to remain in bed, insisting on touring the ranch's windmills so the water won't shame me. On February 14, 1922, he saddled up in a cutting wind, returned feverish, and told his foreman, "Guess the angels can watch the herd tonight." The infection deepened, fluid swelled his lungs. Wife Viola propped him near the fireplace of their adobe ranch house, his marshal's star and well-oiled Winchester displayed on the mantel. At dawn on February 16th, he asked for a cigarette, took a single puff and said, "Well, that's the last of it." Moments later, his head dropped forward and the cigarette fell to the hearth. Embers snuffed out like the breath in his chest. Neighbors wrapped his body in a Navajo blanket and carried it by buckboard to Douglas for burial beside his adopted daughter, Apache May. Onlookers swore the holster they removed was empty, as if Texas John had slipped his pistol on one more invisible manhunt. Even in death, the border country believed, Slaughter never quite quit the trail. Wyatt Earp, frontier lawman in his final act. Wyatt Berry, Stapp Earp, buffalo hunter, gambler, and the iron nerve deputy who survived the OK Corral, spent half a century drifting once Tombstone's gun smoke cleared. He prospected in Alaska, ran saloons in Nevada, and eventually settled with his wife Josephine in a modest Los Angeles bungalow, just as Hollywood discovered the myth he was becoming, a long fade in the City of Lights. By late 1928, Earp was 80, stooped by asthma, and an inflamed bladder, but still stubbornly polishing the nickel-plated Colt he seldom carried anymore. Each morning, he limped to the corner drugstore, silver-tipped cane tapping the sidewalk, while he swapped frontier anecdotes for cigars. Afternoons found him on movie sets, advising silent film cowboys Tom Mix and William S. Hart on the ride. Way to draw iron, a gangly extra name Marion Morrison, soon to rename himself John Wayne, studied the old man's measured stride. Christmas brought a raw Santa Ana wind that worsened his breathing. Confined to bed, he dictated fragments of a never-finished memoir. Bat Masterson had the quickest mind, Doc Holliday the quickest hand. Josephine rubbed menthol on his chest and read telegrams from Mix. "Hang tough, pard." Earp insisted on shaving each dawn, declaring, "A man deserves to meet his maker clean." In the small hours of 13 January 1929, he slipped into fever dreams, once barking, "Drop the gun, Ike," as if Ike Clanton still loomed in the doorway. Near sunrise, he squeezed Josephine's hand, whispered a single unfinished word, "Suppose," and exhaled for the last time. Curtain call. Hollywood friends scraped together funeral costs. His ashes, carried north by train, were interred in Josephine's family plot at Colma's Hills of Eternity Cemetery, an ironic Methodist to Jewish resting place for the era's most storied lawmen. Tom Mix wept openly, Hart placed a martial badge wreath. Earp's legend, finally larger than the man himself, rode on in every celluloid gunfight that followed, while the real Wyatt lay beneath a simple stone marked only 1848-1929.